The next period of ancient Greece that we're going to look at is the Archaic period, which runs from about 620 to 480 BCE. And it's really easy to know when it ends and when the classical period begins, because remember, 479 is when Athens is sacked, and 480 is when Pericles embarks on the rebuilding of the Acropolis. So that really marks the end of the Archaic period and the beginning of the Classical period. But as you'll see, we are going to see some pretty distinct stylistic characteristics that mark the Archaic period in Greece. In this time, the Greek city-states flourish. And we see Athens really come out on top, and they are prominent in art, in trade, and in politics, and they become the most powerful of all the city-states. But there really is a lot of rivalries and competition between the city-states. Each one wanted to be the best militarily, the best politically, the best in terms of a refined civilization and artistry. And this is great for us when we study Greek art because it really causes a rapid development in art. So competition is always good when we are looking at the progression of art. And this competition is what I think scholars used to describe as an evolution in art. We move away from that terminology only because evolution kind of has a negative connotation. But I think the Greeks would have really liked this terminology because it implies a pushing forward of the art. And this is exactly what Greek artists and architects were always striving for, was to improve on the previous generation and refine and better the style or the portrayal of the human figure or the monuments that they were building. So we can look towards a sort of constant striving forward in terms of Greek artistry. This is a very prosperous time for the Greek city-states, and because of that, artists had lots of different opportunities to work. Many of them were competing for commissions from different patrons for architecture, for ceramics, for sculpture. And this led, again, competition is good, and it led towards ever more changing and rapidly developing art. We'll see that in sculpture, the human body and the portrayal of the human body becomes ever more lifelike, although idealized. And the metaphor of man being the center of all things definitely extends to other art forms as well. And we'll see man, the anatomy of man being a metaphor for architecture and for pottery. And one thing we should really notice is the kind of enlivening of the sculpture over time. And in the Archaic period, we're still looking at very stiff figures, ones that are still looking back to Egypt and the Near East. But we're starting to see an enlivening of the figure, a slight upturn of the mouth in the archaic smile, and certainly a pulling away from the background. We're starting to see sculpture in the round, meaning that it is not carved from relief, but actually breaking free from the stone. One thing that we also need to remember when we're looking at Greek sculpture is that it would never have been seen like this, unpainted. It would have been vibrantly painted with vivid colors. And I'm showing you here a sculpture of an archer that's come down to us, and we see it in white marble. But it would have been painted with this very vibrant costume, which identifies the archer as Persian. So we lose a lot when we lose that paint, but we also now have to imagine that the sculptures would have had this color. It would have been painted with a technique called encaustic, or a material called encaustic, which is essentially pigment suspended in hot wax. And the hot wax, the colored hot wax, would have been painted directly on the stone. This medium stuck very well to stone, and you could achieve some very vivid colors with it. The only problem is it wasn't very durable, especially if we're looking at sculpture that was meant to be outdoors, friezes on buildings or pediments. Heat definitely affected the colors, and if you've ever sort of melted hot wax and dripped it on a surface, it chips off very easily. You can sort of pull that wax right off. And what is left what may be the color, but certainly not on stone after thousands of years. One thing I always like to show to demonstrate what this might have looked like is the facade of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And those of you who are from Philadelphia may have not even noticed this, but the north wing pediment of the Philadelphia Museum of Art has the sculptures in the frieze that are painted exactly the way Greek sculptures would have been painted, with different vibrant colors. Their costumes would have been painted, and then we see this vibrant blue background. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what Greek sculpture was meant to look like in context.